Hi, I'm Michael Bradshaw, Vice President of K&M Collision and current board member of the Society of Collision Repair Specialists. Today we're here to talk to you a little bit about MIG welders, what's important when selecting a MIG welder, and also some of the important processes that you need to follow as a shop when you're performing MIG welds.
Hey guys, we've been talking about welding machines, but one of the most important things that we really have neglected is our technicians and the personal protection equipment that is necessary when you're doing this MIG welding.
We're saying our technicians. At the same time, it's a shop requirement that these safety features and safety equipment are available for the technician.
Absolutely, and there's a whole gamut of products that we have to supply so we can keep our technicians as safe as possible, from respirators to the fume extractors. You may not be required to have a fume extractor, but certainly from the PPE side of it, respirators are mandatory.
Well, and the big point that I think shop owners especially need to realize is it's not your technician's responsibility to ensure they have the proper safety equipment. And I think that's the point Andy was making and the point Dave was trying to make. As a shop, you have to make sure they are supplied with equipment that's sufficient enough to protect them. You know, their eyes with the welding helmet, but the respirator from the fumes, and in many cases even, like Andy alluded to, a fume extractor. So let's talk about welding helmets and what are some things that a shop or technician would really want to consider when purchasing a welding helmet?
The welding helmets are, when I do the training with my WCS 03 and I go into the shops, most of these guys go over to a inexpensive helmet, and I ask them, when your eyes go bad, where are you going to buy new ones? I ask them, would you go to a swap meet and spend $5 for a 25-piece socket set? No, they're no good. Well, yet you go in, you buy the cheapest helmet that you can, and you can never replace your eyes. So one of the things that you want to look for is a good quality helmet. And what makes a good quality helmet? Sensors. Even though some of these cheap have sensors, their sensors are so weak that they take a long time before they kick over. A good quality helmet will have a sensor that will kick off extremely fast, because you don't want your eyes bombarded with ultraviolet rays. Usually the number of sensors it is indicative of the quality of the helmet. Now there are some helmets that have 2 sensors that are great helmets, but on the general rule, the more sensors there are, the better they're off. 3 is great for the collision industry, 4 is an overkill, but those are your most expensive. The second part of it is, does that mask have the ability to hold a Doppler? Most of the technicians out there, their eyes have troubles, and they can't see what they're doing. This is close-up work. And if you have a little bracket inside that you're allowed to put a magnifier in there, it doesn't affect your eyes, but it allows you to get closer to you, see what you're doing, produces a better weld. That's your first. The other part of when you look at a mask, can I take off the front screens? And are they available? I mean, a lot of these masks, you buy them, you can't take the screens off. And if they can take them off, where do I get new screens?
I'm sure you go into shops all the time where the screens have so much splatter on them you can.
That's
you
right.
can
How are
barely
you supposed to see it?
Right.
I keep in my truck for the test all 8 helmets, and virtually every time I'm finished up by the end of the day, they're all being used. So that's the most critical. But we forget about other things. What about hand protection? Gloves. Now, again, what type of glove are you using? Some guys go in, they go and buy these big, huge, I'll say, oven mitts. Those are for stick welding. They're not for feeling, and you need to have a sense of feel when you're MIG welding. And some guys get TIG welding gloves, which are very thin because they don't offer the protection. Jackets. You got to protect, especially in overheads. So you make sure you have a good quality jacket. And the last thing is what you talked about was respirators. We have some, they have to be a particulate, those will be pink. Make sure that your technicians have a respirator fit test once a year. That's an OSHA requirement. We also have some units out on the market now that are battery powered, and put fresh air in there. So then you get cool air coming that's fresh, and it's an enclosed system. And when you talk about specifications, one manufacturer actually specifies this particular system to be on their program.
When you're talking about the respirators for welding, which 90% of the industry probably doesn't even use, there's a lot of bad carcinogens coming off in the smoke while you're welding, and these respirators, they're not some magnificent tiny little facet company. It's big companies like 3M make them, so they're readily available. But we just talked about the shield, and we're talking about the guy welding, but obviously there's a technician working next to him in the next bay. What are we going to do to protect that guy?
Yeah, welding screens is another, that's something I think a lot of shops don't have. I mean, welding screens to screen off that technician and the welding sparks and debris from all the other technicians in the shop. I think it's another important thing, and is becoming a requirement on a lot of the manufacturer programs more and more.
It's that, and it's just good safety practices. Anything that you can do to shield the others that are around the area, the affected area, from being exposed to it, that's only good for everybody that's within the confines of the shop itself.
There's something that kind of goes along the lines of the respirator protection would be the fume extractors. There's more and more companies now within our industry that are selling fume extractors, and that's something, again, that's becoming more prevalent within the manufacturer requirements of their certification programs. And talk a little bit, Dave, about a fume extractor, why it's important and how it kind of helps.
The fume extractors were a box with a fan that has an arm sucking away the smoke when you're welding. But there are such a difference in them. If you look at a fume extractor, do a little research. See, is it going to go through a regular filter, and then is it going through a charcoal filter, so that the air coming back out of it, which is in most cases coming back into the shop, is cleaner than the air that was in the shop. We talk about a mask over a guy's mouth when he's welding, but in reality, your eyes are the critical point of absorbing this carcinogens from the smoke. So you want to never have it where the smoke from welding can even get to the tech's face. And these companies or manufacturers of certification programs requiring this, they're trying to protect the technician. We need these guys. We can't, train them, and we want them to be in this industry for 40 years. We don't want them to have any ill health in the process. And when you talked about the welding shield, there was issues where I have seen the owners of the car, the consumer, standing while they're getting an estimate, and the guy starts welding and the flash is in the consumer's face. So the shields are critical to keep everything confined in one spot. And again, on a welding shield, make sure it's a welding shield. And it's not just a colored piece of plastic curtain. A welding shield is very specific. As much as a fireproof blanket is supposed to be fireproof. We've seen welding blankets that are in flames. Obviously, they're not a welding blanket. But, Andy, in your shop, like, how many welding blankets and safety shields and where do you store all this stuff when the guy's not working on it?
You're making me think about it right now. There's a lot of them. I mean, from the blankets alone. I mean, we've got to have storage areas on storage areas, and you keep getting more and more every other month, it seems like. They get used up. They have a life cycle on them. You see somebody pull out a welding blanket and it looks like Swiss cheese, not exactly going to protect and do the job that it's supposed to do. But I think everybody's seen that in the real world, where somebody pulls something out and there's holes all over it.
Well, I think, something we've kind of overlooked, I don't know if it's as much personal protection as it is just shop protection in general. Fire extinguisher. You're welding on a car, you should have a fire extinguisher nearby.
And you need to know what kind of fire extinguisher you need to have based on what kind of welding you're doing nearby.
Yep.
I mean, Toby, you could probably go into some of that as far as the...
Well, if you're doing any aluminum welding, should have a Class D fire extinguisher within your facility and close by.
What would be a good indicator that you've got a Class D in the shop?
Where a ABC fire extinguisher is red, a Class D is yellow.
Yellow. I mean, I think for the shops out there and technicians, that's something to be very aware of. If you're doing some aluminum welding, you need to make sure that you've got a yellow fire extinguisher in sight. Yeah, I mean, you know, the first thing that really goes into the welding process is the personal protection part of it. You know, that's the first thing that should be thought of from the shop's perspective, from the technician's perspective, is I need to be safe. I need to start in a safe mindset, and then you start worrying about going through the technical aspects of creating the proper weld. But first and foremost, I'm in a safe environment around me, the work area, and I know what I've got a plan just in case something goes wrong.
If you have any more questions about this topic, or you're looking for more information on others, please visit the Society of Collision Repair Specialists website. You can find us on the web at www.scrs.com.